The Chechen rebels claim they're not only resisting, they're winning. Their weapons are makeshift. This is a machine gun mounted on a motorcycle sidecar. But their success is stunning. So far, the Chechens have kept Russia's army out of the center of Grozny. And 5 days after President Yeltsin ordered the final assault on this city, he's now called a halt to the bombing of the capital, which has killed so many and destroyed so much. The Chechens are bound to take it as a sign that Kremlin resolve to win this war may be weakening.
The history of Russia is heavily tied to the history of communism and totalitarianism. But my story is not about that. It's about what I witnessed as a journalist during the fight with the Soviet army and Grozny. And there's no other way to explain it other than that death was coming for people. Back in those days, I worked as a journalist, embedded with the Russian forces. And I'll tell you, there's something about a camera that makes you feel invisible. Even though you know deep down inside you, right there in the midst of the action, it makes you feel protected. And I'll say this to you. There were multiple times where I was looking through my lens and actually saw a sniper aiming directly at me, and every time they decided not to shoot. As a journalist, when you experience something like that, it makes you feel invincible. The only thing, I swear to you, the only thing that frightened me during this war was the RPGs and the mortars that were falling everywhere. Now, if you've never been to war, it's hard to describe the sights and sounds of war. The endless noise, bombs going off, the dead bodies. Some people, bodies literally blown into pieces. Others, dead long enough for rigor mortis to set in. I'm talking about people frozen stiff, swollen bellies, pus leaking from their bodies. During my time embedded with the Russian forces, I can honestly say to you that they got their asses kicked all around that city. Now, and during this time, I witnessed the absolute worst of humanity. We're talking about families trying to flee from the war-torn areas in their sedans, mowed down, literally shot down in cold blood. Many of them, women and children. And let me tell you, I'll never forget the chants in the distance. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! As grenades and RPGs were chucked at us from rooftop buildings. And again, I know many of you have never been to war, but RPGs are nothing like what you see on TV or in video games. They don't just fly and hit a spot and detonate. Sometimes they bounce and skim across the ground, sliding and then blowing up. Now, after seeing this for the first time, I coined the phrase, the shadow of death. And the first time I saw it was through my lens. I was embedded with ground troops and 5 T-72 tanks. Imagine me there hiding in a corner, peeping around a building. Through my lens along the rooftop, I could see several insurgents. The tanks that I was embedded with slowly turned, taking aim. And just before they fired, this dark mass ascended on the rooftop, like swirling tornadoes of smoke diving down out of the air. Seconds later, the rooftop was hit, the building partially collapsed. Bodies were flying through the air, falling 5 stories to the ground. And let me tell you, through that lens, I watched as that smoke separated, encircled and swirled around each one of those bodies as they were falling. Later that day was the second time I saw it. We had fallen back to what we thought was a safe spot. I was talking to one of the young Russian soldiers when again, I saw this black mass dart behind him on the camera. And moments later, just as I had finished recording his statement, his head jolts to the side and his body falls limp to the ground. Brains splattered all over the place from a sniper's bullet. Finally, let me share the absolute worst incident. And it was this incident that made me leave the battlefield. You see, it was those same 5 tanks. They had got caught in the ambush. We're lagging behind about 2.5 blocks as these tanks slowly move forward on these 2 parallel streets. When suddenly you hear it, Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! And everywhere on the rooftop appear these men with RPGs, all of them firing simultaneously. The explosion, so powerful, dust, metal flying through the air. And as the dust began to settle, through my lens again, I could see the smoky black mist swirling, darting around. And again, through my lens, I could see that smoky black mist swirling and darting around as if it was actually feeding on the dead bodies of these men. Look, after seeing that, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I literally begged to be reassigned, and 3 days later, I was flown out of the area. Now, since then, my concept of war and the afterlife has changed. Now, I can't tell you for sure that those swirls of black mist were like reapers coming to take those people's soul, but what else could it have been? I can tell you for sure they damn sure were not angels, because I didn't see not one miracle performed during that time. The only thing there was death, and it was everywhere.